to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. In India, we have many politicians who can do politics, but very few politicians who can write policy for the ministry, for the industry, and for the country at large, and also frame laws. Our guest today is in the select league of such gentlemen. He is one of India's most sought-after lawyers, an eminent jurist, a distinguished parliamentarian, and a sitting member of the Rajya Sabha. He is a thinker, author, and a commentator. Mr. Abhishek Singhvi, welcome to our Up Close and Personal series, part 2 of Legally Speaking. So we'll continue our discussion from the last time when we were discussing, and I would want to ask you that you, if we know it correctly, were selected for a scholarship to go abroad after your school, right after your school.
Yes, it was virtually in those days automatic that if you topped India,
yes,
there was a little known thing called OPOS, Fellowship or Scholarship, which was basically given to the Indian School Certificate topper, subject to other things. And it enabled you to go to England then and there. And you'd end up, doing the A-levels and then doing the university there.
Yes.
And it would have been a good thing for me to do in many normal ways. But I think at that time I was really even more introvert than I thought of myself.
Easy.
And my parents, of course, thought that to lose a son so early on, he'll never probably come back to India. So all in all, it was something available on a platter, and I never took it, which is for study in Britain straight after school, which is now, of course, much more common.
But I want to understand a thing from you. Somebody who tops 250 schools in India in those days, gets a scholarship to go abroad and study, refuses it. In retrospect, how would you see that decision?
It's difficult to say because God has been kind, life has been kind. I have done well thereafter as well. And I went to the same place I would have gone then, ultimately, that is Cambridge. In retrospect, I think for me it was a good decision. Today I would not say that you should spurn an offer like that.
Yes.
But for me, because I had a great time in Stephens, which I went to instead of going abroad then. And I think I became more firmly connected to India by doing university here, in some sense.
And so Stephanians in India are a class of people by themselves, and each has done well in diplomacy, politics, law. What was it, you refused a scholarship to go to Stephens, so not to
Stephens, to go abroad.
To go abroad.
After school.
No, to go abroad after school, but you refused a scholarship and then you went to Stephens.
Yes, because I had to study in India thereafter.
I wouldn't say that was a climb down, but of course you refused something much.
Well, let me say this, Tarun. There was a period in the 70s, roughly I would say 73, 4 till early 80s. These are periods which have no explanation.
Yes.
When Stephens Economics Honours was considered the ultimate.
Is it?
Yeah. It was the Mecca and the Medina and the ultimate pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. It's difficult to believe now, but I would in retrospect say that it was more sought after than an IIT degree, more sought after than an IIM. And it has just attained that for that 1 decade period. Now, in that time, our batch, again, I don't think so much to do with Stephens, but the fact that they already had a reputation, very snooty. So they chose only the toppers first from all across, the West Bengal board topper, the All India Higher Secondary Board topper, the Senior Cambridge topper, etc. And then when they filled up the classes with those, then they went to the number 2s of the same boards. So anyway, the input was of such high quality.
Yes.
But I must say that, again, and I don't ascribe it to any brilliance as such, because I always find so many brilliant youngsters around us. The people I interview are usually far better and brilliant than me who's interviewing them. That's the truth about the youngsters we have now. But the batch I was in Economics Honours St. Stephens, which is a very reputed course, has done very well for itself. Our classmates, and many of us are not in touch. We had a recent reunion where some of us met, but include Dhananjaya Chandrachud, Sanjay Kishan Kaul, feedback is Vinayak Chatterjee.
Yes.
Arvind Subramaniam, the former Chief Economic Advisor. Ajay Pal Singh Banga, the world head of MasterCard.
Okay. He's a...
Ivan Menezes, the world head of Diageo.
Oh.
I can't remember, there's so many other names.
Maybe Jayant Nath.
Jayant Nath, Judge of the High Court. K.P.
Yes.
Krishnan is Secretary to the Government of India.
Yes.
There's a long list of people.
Okay.
And it was, I think one of those fantastic batches. Many of us are in touch. And therefore you can understand why Stephens was a much sought after course.
But
it's not so after that decade. It's not the same degree.
You mean 70s were different, clearly.
70s and early 80s, clearly.
So, we also gathered that you also even were a topper, one among the toppers in Stephens also. You continued
We
that.
had 3 years.
Yes.
Manjeev Singh Puri is the name I forgot to mention, the current ambassador to Nepal.
Yes.
And would have been at one time a contender for foreign secretary.
Yes.
In the first year, you used to be marked out of 150.
Okay.
And there was a 131, and then Manjeev got 130 out of 150, and I got 129.
Okay.
So I was third in the university rankings, not in the college, university.
Yes.
But I think in third year, the overall average, Dhananjay beat everybody.
Yes.
And I was respectable. I was like 4th or 5th in the university of like 50 colleges. So it's a good thing. But we were all very good students. It's a select band. And of course, we were ahead in degree markings than all the other names I've taken, who were all very bright.
Yes.
But in life, so many have done well in different spheres.
Yes.
In economics, in World Bank, in IMF, in bureaucracy, in industry. We have 2 world heads in one batch alone of 2 top
So
corporates.
that's the kind of illustriousness you talk about.
And very humble batch. Some of them were there at a recent union for the first time. And absolutely, no airs. And that's, I think, they have to deal with certain different situations. But when you are in your private life, they're very simple, very nice people, most of them.
And if I may ask you, you were a student with an academic bent of mind who topped all through school, and you were one among the toppers in college. Did you change track because the kind of arguments you do today before court? Were you a debater in college? Because
now, that's an interesting transformation of an introvert. Incidentally, I still consider myself an introvert. I'm not a very social being, so in that sense an introvert, and yet a good communicator.
Yes.
So I don't know how to pinpoint the change, but I think when I was given some speaking assignments as a mark of honor for being a good student in school, that started changing. That was the annual speech I talked about.
Okay.
And then in college,
yes,
I opened up definitely because of 2 things. One, we had a very good man in debating, somewhat of a maverick and eccentric who unfortunately passed away, Vinod Chaudhary, who's probably the best debater I've come across. He was a person who would just light up when it came to debates. And he could speak on anything. He was the kind of guy who said, right now I throw a coin and speak on a potato is a potato is a potato. He could hold you enthralled for 10 minutes on that subject. And he could speak against the motion or for the motion, depending on what you told him. So he was the head of our debating team, and he encouraged some of us. So we did a college kind of team for the college. That encouraged and opened me up. Also, I fought a student election and lost it in the Students' Council of St. Stephens.
You first brushed with politics?
Well, a kind, it's a college way, because Stephens was not integrated with the university. So it was within the intra-college.
Yes.
I was also the secretary of the Planning Forum, a very respectable society of St. Stephens, which still continues till today. And I remember that Dr. Manmohan Singh was a speaker at one of our functions. At that time, he was not in politics, and nor was I in politics in any manner, and of course, a long age gap. But those things helped. And then when I went to Cambridge, shortly after that, for the first 3 months in Cambridge, I was a very active debater because I wanted to make it in the Cambridge Union. And I got a paper speech in my first term, which meant I had a future. A paper speech is a mark of honor given to somebody but I left it after the first term because I found that either I had to perform reasonably well for the money being spent on my education, or be taken up by debating, and I couldn't do both. So I think there again I backed off. But I have done a lot of debating from roughly the 79 to 84 odd period.
And if I may ask you, so one generally in life would realize who one is while one goes through these motions of life, when one is contesting elections, debating. Can you recall that you felt that there was a natural talent for you to present facts, for you to argue on a case? Was there any
I think a lot of these things, and youngsters should realize that, are obvious phobias which end when you are thrown. It's like being thrown to the deep end of a swimming pool. There's no better way of learning swimming. And in these matters, the more you do it, the more you do it badly, the more you do it middling, and the more you do it well. It just improves each time. Even today, each well-crafted speech, and I've done so many of them now,
Yes.
there's always scope for improvement if you have the time to sit back and look at those things. So I think these are matters where those youngsters who have these, Nani Palkhiwala is the best example.
Yes.
He had a stammer.
Yes.
And then when he started, after the stammer, he had a problem public speaking. He's written about it candidly. If Palkhiwala, who's one of the greatest orators I've heard, has that, then all of us have it in us.
And so you were speaking of the kind of college that was and the kind of teachers you had. I believe Arun Singh, who later became ambassador to USA, was one of your teachers.
Yeah, Justice Badr Ahmad.
Justice Badr
Durraiz
Ahmad was?
Not much older.
Okay.
And of course, we had the old venerable ones, Dr. Ray Chaudhary, who's still there, retired emeritus,
And-
A.N. Ray, etc.
And I get to know a very different side of your personality in college. It is said you opted for theatre for a bit. I mean, very unlikely for you to opt for theatre, somebody who's academic.
Yes, I think there was a kind of a feeling inside me that I wanted to try different things and also show that I was at least partially multifaceted as like my father. These are things which are complexes within a child in
You
retrospect.
did it out of that feeling?
To an extent. We had a thought of theatre because my father also was the chairman of the National School of Drama.
In that
And
sense,
his director was no less than Al-Qazi himself, a doyen and a giant. I have gone to theatre of the most amazing kind. It's still done today, but those ones I have seen are rare to duplicate. I have seen Mukhyamantri, Mahabhoj, and Tughlaq in the earlier versions. You see those theatres and you realize the power of Indian theatre. So anyway, Al-Qazi's son Faisal Al-Qazi, whom I've lost touch with, started a IIC, India International Centre Theatre Club, by which time our house was the one bang opposite IIC. So I kind of enrolled, and he was good enough to take me in one theatre, the only one I've done, A Slow Tomorrow. I remember the name. It was a play with a kind of lot of philosophical overtones and all. And I played the role of Halim, which was the second most important character. And it was great to see a different genre. But I realized that, if you want to excel academically, these can be occasional hobbies. Otherwise, time taken is a problem. And ultimately, I didn't follow up.
Okay.
But all this helped to loosen me up, to open me up, to give a broader horizon, and of course, to improve my communication skills.
so it's you're attributing to all the later work that you did, these things were the formative years
I think the
which helped you?
cumulative impact of the student union election, the debating in St. Stephen's, the debating for first 3 to 6 months
And
in
the exposure
Cambridge,
to drama.
and this drama, events like that did help.
And then life moved ahead and you opted or applied to Cambridge.
Yes, I did well in Stephens. I applied to Cambridge, and of course, Cambridge was a great thing to do. In those days, you could get admission into the course after if you had it, but they looked for academic excellence,
Yes.
which helped a lot. They needed a social reference, which is stated to be without anything to do with merit, and that was Hidayatullah gave me that reference. He admired my father, and at his request, he gave me a reference. I went and met him. I was in awe of him. He had retired as Chief Justice by then. Then the reason I still went, I might not have gone then, was because I got into Trinity College, which is one of the top colleges.
In Dublin?
No, Trinity College, Cambridge.
Cambridge, yeah.
Trinity Cambridge is in Cambridge in UK,
Yes.
and that is widely regarded as probably one of the best colleges of the 44 colleges in Oxford and Cambridge. There will be, of course, dissenters on that. It happens to be the largest. It is said at one time that it has more Nobel Prize winners in Trinity than the whole of England put together, and at one time even the whole of Europe put together in one college. It has a great number of diversity, and Newton is from Trinity.
Yes.
Ramanujam, Littlewood, Hardy, great tradition in mathematics and theoretical physics, all that.
So this was the story of how Abhishek Manu Singhvi graduated from one of the best colleges in India to one of the best in the West or in the world, if one may say so. But we'll take a short break and we'll continue this discussion. Welcome back. Just before the break, we discussed how Dr. Singhvi went on, then Abhishek Manu Singhvi, student Abhishek Manu Singhvi graduated from Stephens, then came to Trinity College. Now, moving ahead, we will discuss how were those days as a student, somebody who has been in India largely. Maybe you would have traveled once or twice out of India, but you're born and brought up in India. You land up in an alien country, away from your house. I don't know if you can remember, what was that feeling like, coming away?
A scared feeling, a negative feeling for many weeks.
For many weeks?
And each person has his own reasons.
Were you homesick?
Terribly, terribly insecure, scared. And now, now one can be frank, you do an extra bit of brave front when you have these feelings inside you. So you give a nonchalant, uncaring kind of thing, oh, everything's fine, everything. But inside you are very scared. Reason number 2 is probably peculiar to me. I couldn't adjust to the weather.
Weather?
You have to start your Cambridge in October. All terms start in October. And from October to March, you literally see the sun, if you're lucky, between 11 and 3.
That's all.
And that too, a part of that. Now for an Indian, and I'm basically rooted in India, it's very difficult, it's negative, dreary. Then comes Christmas, within 3 months of joining. The whole Cambridge empties out. You don't really have anywhere to go. Those days, it's not so easy to take a flight back, it cost money. So you actually go, I went and stayed with relatives in London. Now these are distant relatives.
Yes.
So, that homesickness is very acute. Number 4, the English are actually nice chaps, but they do have what we call a stiff upper lip. They have a barrier to break. They are not naturally warm.
Oh.
They are inside warm. They're
But
not antisocial, but they're not naturally overtly warm. So it takes time to adjust to that. So you make friends slowly. You have self-doubt. You have a feeling that, look, will I perform as well as justifies spending money and coming here, because one only had a partial scholarship.
Yes.
You also feel that you have to excel. So this is it's all part of a good learning process. And part of that reason is the reason why I tried to overcome it by this nonchalant attitude and immerse myself in debating.
Again?
That was the first 6 months or 5 months in Cambridge.
Debating.
I did lots of debating.
Okay.
And I made a very good friend, Egyptian friend, who's still a good friend of mine, Ehab Makar. He and I formed a team and we represented our college in other college competitions as well. So this helps to give you a feeling of confidence. Inside you're still insecure. You're not sure how it will turn out. Ultimately you have no real friend, because it's just not the same that you can just go home out of town on a train. So I think this was all the first term. By the second term it becomes 50%. And then you settle down. By the end of the time when I was leaving Cambridge, to supplement my income, I was supervising what Cambridge calls supervision, Oxford calls tutorials, to supplement my income. So I was actually teaching people. So by then you are, the whole city, it's a lovely city, you've got friends, you are adjusted, but it takes time.
So you landed in Trinity in 1979. Now, that is not exactly the UK of today, where curry is prevalent and Indian food has got its... On a lighter note, did you even adjust to the food initially?
I was going to add, it's a good question. Weather was one, food was the second one. You eat in hall, what you call hall.
Yes.
Now, I'm a vegetarian.
Yes.
Vegetarianism was even then accommodatable there.
Yes.
But the diversity and the ease was not there in 79, obviously. I remember, to save money, I took an Aeroflot flight. Those days used to have a sticker, not a computerized thing.
Yeah.
So they put big VJ on the ticket, and on the flight you serve duck. And when you show the ticket, they speak little English on Aeroflot.
Yes.
And they said, but this is vegetarian.
Duck is vegetarian?
Yes, except red meat in many countries, most things are vegetarian.
Also for the Russians in that case.
So these are the things you have. Now in hall, the best you'd get is mashed potato. English anyway are known in Europe for the worst kind of cooking. So anyway, now within that bad cooking, you come up with a vegetarian option. So you have mashed potatoes, and mashed potatoes. If you want diversity, you have a round potato instead of a mashed potato, boiled. So these are the kind of things you learn. But then eventually, by the 6th month, you realize that you just go down to the corner market, buy some fresh vegetables. So I used to cook. I could do a mean dish of dal.
You learned cooking all by yourself?
Easy. Survival is the mother of invention, and necessity is the mother of invention. So survival necessity is a deadly combination. So I could do actually very good rajmas. I could do very good khichdis. The one regret I had, I couldn't do papad, which I loved as a Jodhpuri. But that's good, and some fresh vegetables.
So
it's much better than what it passes off as food in hall.
well, that's interesting, but I think you had to do that because then you spent about 7 years in UK.
I ultimately spent 7 years, and I'm, in a sense, a big learning curve. Undergrad, postgrad, PhD, teaching students,
I mean,
all capacities. And I had at the end, when I left, married accommodation because I got married in my penultimate year of leaving Cambridge. And my first son was born there.
In Cambridge?
Yes, when I was finishing my PhD.
So that's about 1986?
He was born in 84.
84.
So I left Cambridge in 85.
Oh.
And I got married in 82, and my wife accompanied me after a short gap in 83. So, it was seeing the college in all capacities.
But
the university in all capacities, city in all capacities.
No, I'm very curious on this fact. You spent 7 long years at Trinity.
And PhD as well, you see. So.
But with PhD, a lot of people here in India, they know you as a politician, a very leading lawyer, arguing counsel. Nobody, has that attribute that you're a PhD who could have become a lecturer.
I was actually a don. I would not have come back to India but for the jibe of my parents. I had started earning some small amount of income. I was teaching, and ultimately you would have progressed into an academic.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a few things. First is PhD is totally, supposedly unnecessary for law.
Yes.
Again, it was a competition within myself. My father has a PhD from abroad. I must do a PhD. This is a frank, honest answer. Everybody, including my father, dissuaded me, including my father. Said, practice mein aana chahiye. Why waste more time? Number 3, Cambridge PhDs are very lonely furrow. Unlike US, it's a completely, undergrad is very closely supervised.
Okay.
PhDs in Cambridge are completely unsupervised.
Okay.
One of the reasons I went on to do it is I got an excellent guide, Professor H.W.R. Wade,
okay,
a legend not only in land law, which doesn't apply to India, but in public law. And I stayed on, and then, you had to prove yourself, and I was very fortunate and proud that a mortality rate in Cambridge PhDs is that 50% don't ever complete it.
50%?
Of those who enroll. 50% of those who complete it, there's only 50%. Of those who completed, those 50%, the vast majority takes 6 years to do it. I was able to do it in 3 years. And the most terror moment of my life, if you were to ask me which is the most terrorized moment of my life, is after those 3 years, completely unsupervised. You sit before a very high-powered external examiner, which is outside of Cambridge University, who later went on to become the head of the public law, the most prestigious publication, and the internal professor, president of a college in Cambridge.
Yes.
And they grill you, and they say, Mr. Singhvi, page 588, footnote 978. And you come out, and you have a terror that you'll be rejected, because all your 3 years' work means again takes 6 to 8 months minimum, if not longer.
Yes.
And to be approved the first time round was, I literally remember being drained. I just sat down on the footpath when I got the news. So these are moments of learning, and most people don't do it in 6 years, or less than 6 years. Of course, many leave it after 3
But
years.
it's very interesting, Dr. Singhvi's, if then PhD thesis was in emergency powers, and if he's kind enough, that should also become a legally speaking episode someday. That very thesis
Well,
itself.
you'll be happy to know that it's now almost, I think, within 6 to 8 months, going to be published as a book.
Yes. So
it remains one of the few books on the subject even today.
That's where this all gets very interesting. We are right up to his PhD, and I'm out of time, so I must draw this episode to a close. But in the part 3 of Up Close and Personal series with Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, we will move right from his PhD to his early legal career. Did it help him? How was he seen as a PhD lawyer in Delhi? All those things. We would like to thank Dr. Singhvi for sparing his time for part 2 of Up Close and Personal series. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. Thank you so much.